to ensure that the public stays safe and we flatten that curve. So at this time, we'll talk more about specifics of what's been going on with town government and give you those updates. But at this point, I'd really like to hear from the public. If we have anybody on, I think we have a couple callers. Jason, if you'd please announce the first caller. Good morning. Who's calling? We have a caller?
Good morning, Peter. This is David Buda. How are you?
Hi, David. Good morning. I'm well, thank you. And yourself?
Excellent. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I noticed that most people are observing social distancing rules at the town recycling centers and throughout the town, so that's a good thing. In your opening remarks, you mentioned tax assessor having to meet certain deadlines. As you know, yesterday the governor did adopt a new executive order which allows the town at their option to delay by 30 days the date for the filing of the tentative tax assessment roll, and also to set a new date, 21 days thereafter, for the tax grievance day. I'm wondering when the town council will discuss this and make a decision and announce the new timetable if it's going to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And you're correct. You know, we've been speaking daily with the representatives of the governor's office as well as county exec, and that's been one of the prime topics of discussion amongst our county exec call daily regarding taxes. So the tax rolls were due May 1st, and grievances were set the third Tuesday of the month following the completion of the roll. That has now, we've gotten official word that has been pushed up. However, the tax 31st deadline for second half taxes collection has not been extended yet. We've been in discussions about trying to get some provision put into that deadline so that those who can show extreme hardship and the inability to pay their taxes relating to loss of job or other extenuating circumstances be allowed to have the penalty and interest waived, and to set the due date at a later date for those who are under those hardships. That has not been finalized yet. There are a number of issues surrounding that. Villages in the county would have to wait for their money to come through, and that creates obviously problems for them. So we're trying to do a work through on that. I expect in the next couple of days we'll make some headway, and we'll have an announcement as to how that's going to get set up and dealt with. But I appreciate your call, and stay well.
I have just one follow-up to clarify something. As I read the executive order, number 202-22, it's the delay or rescheduling of the tentative assessment roll deadline is at local option, which means that I think the town board needs to act and to set a date and to activate that option and to determine whether the grievance day will be June 16th, or I think it'll have to be June 23rd if you choose a tentative roll date of June the 1st or May 31st. So I think the town needs to act and clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, with regard to the extension of the grievance and the roll date, that I don't see that as being a problem. I don't think there's any disagreement about moving forward to do that. And I'm glad we finally got guidance from the governor's office last night. But again, I think that the thing that's really weighing large in most people's mind is when the taxes are actually due to be paid and what penalty interests might be waived for those extreme circumstances. But again, thank you for your call. Do we have another caller, Jason?
Yes,
Morning.
Good morning. This is Daniel Farnham from Montauk, New York here. I just wanted to thank David Lease and Ed Michaels. I reached out to David last week during the town, or just after the town work session. There had been some confusion as to what constituted essential businesses out here in Montauk, and I know the commercial fleet had been struggling to find parts in order to keep our fleet going here. Some police officers from the town had gone around and shut down some of the parts departments from our local marinas, and they're definitely very necessary for ourselves in order to keep our fleet going out here. And after that, there was, I guess they clarified that, and then we got those marinas and parks departments up and running. I know since then, the state has said that recreational marinas are allowed to be open as well. But I did want to thank them for taking swift action on that and enabling our commercial fleet out here to continue working during these trying times. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, David did reach out to me immediately when he heard from you, and that issue, I had known that the commercial fishing fleet is in fact deemed essential. We had weighed in early on the county call to let the governor know that we really needed our commercial fishermen out there. You know, they're supplying food to the public. And the issue with marinas being closed meant that marina stores were closed. However, I pressed that because if they're in support of commercial fishing or any other deemed essential business, that they should be open to conduct that specific business. So I'm glad we got that cleared up and got those parts available to the fleet. And we appreciate your support and the ability to bring food to us, and be safe out there when you're fishing.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate that.
Take care.
Thanks, Dan.
We have any other callers on the line? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. Who's on the line?
It's Vicki Lippman. How are you?
Oh, hey, Vicki. I've been trying to reach you by phone.
I know, I have bad cell service here. I'll call you today, Peter, but I hope you're all doing well during this difficult time. And last spring, this question is actually for David. Last spring, we had code enforcement come to our Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee, and we discussed various issues in town. But the question was asked how the town is enforcing the rental registry and the illegal Airbnb rentals who are doing short-term rentals throughout the summer. And David had mentioned that the town was looking to outsource this because it was very difficult for code enforcement to handle. So I was just wondering, has that been done? Because I know a lot of people are concerned about these short-term rentals this year with the pandemic.
I will check with Don Koss on that. I think that is an idea that I support. It would be actually to try to bring an outside vendor to take over a lot of the time that it would take to actually sift through ever-changing online rental markets. But I would have to check with him. But I don't think, I'm not exactly sure on that, Vicki, right now. I know code enforcement and public safety under Chief Sarlo's watch right now has been very busy at other things with COVID. But I'll look into that and get back to you.
So one of the issues.
Can I add a comment there? I did check in with code enforcement on that, and the answer I got was really a question. You know, do you have an address of a place that you think is in violation? And I had done some research on it some months ago before we got into the COVID crisis, and actually connected with a commercial entity that does that kind of searching, and then further spoke to an official in the village of the town of Shelter Island. And they had used a commercial app, really, for a while, and then switched over to some publicly accessible applications. And, you know, what I would hope we could do, it's a little tricky. I was exploring Airbnb not just like about a week or two ago, would be to somehow get a notice out from the town, perhaps talking about, you know, the requirement for a rental registry number, because a lot of those rentals don't have them. And you can also communicate with the owner once you get on. So that might be something that we could do. Give them a notice saying you need a rental registry number. Non-essential travel is discouraged by the CDC. New Yorkers who come out to the East End have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I'd certainly be happy to help out on this. I've been looking into it, but I do think we're going to need to start scouring the internet a little bit better so that we can get a little better informed where there might be violations rather than doing it address by address.
So I think that's one of the issues that many people don't really understand, and that is that it's not against the law to advertise, and you can advertise, but you actually, in order to enforce anything, you have to find that there's a violation. You can't bring charges against somebody for advertising on the internet. You have to build the case based on the actual short-term rental occurring within that location. And that is somewhat problematic and difficult in a democracy where we have certain protections about property rights and, illegal search and seizure and that sort of thing. We have constitutional rights that extend to all of us. So, we appreciate when someone lets us know that there's an advertisement on Airbnb or HomeAway or whatever it is, advertising a property for short term. But if we don't have the actual physical address, it's not possible to actually build a case and cite them with violations. Now, I really think that ultimately the solution here is to work directly with Airbnb and HomeAway to have them basically block any short-term rental in a calendar within the jurisdiction. And, I know they're loath to restrict rentals in any way or have any interference from government. But honestly, it gets to be a similar situation if somebody was promoting illegal activity or helping to facilitate illegal activity as a third party, putting together, for instance, the sale of illegal substances to a buyer of illegal substances, and the person in the middle is effectuating that illegal activity to occur. I feel that they're liable for that, frankly. And that may be a way to have inroads with those services and to get them to help us enforce our laws.
Well, there are some available apps available to the public that don't involve that access information that's publicly available that might help us. And it would the easiest violation is that failure to have a rental registry number, because that's clear from the ads. But I think we're going to have to. I'm not sure we're going to get cooperation from any.
Well, Jeff, do you want to take that on?
I can try. I probably need some help from technical support on it. Yeah.
Jeff, I just want to remind you that now, the rental registry, you have to have a notary. And so it's very hard. I've had a few complaints people saying they can't get a notary at this time.
Yeah, you can actually. They've expanded the rules on notaries, so you can do it.
Not widely known amongst the public, though.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, this is
a good opportunity for us to say that there is a process for electronic notary of documents that has been approved by the state as part of the executive order. I don't recall which number it was. We're up to executive order 22, just over a month out.
So I saw that executive order, but I still think people are, Peter, as you said, they're unaware of it. And so either they're trying to update their rental registry and they need a notary, or they're, to get a new rental registry, to start doing what Jeff is talking about, so that we get as many people as possible to sign up if they're going to rent their houses. Then we need to make.
I'm sorry. I just want to, again, point out this is another opportunity to inform the public. If you have an existing rental registry,
right,
and you've paid for that and it expires during this time where we're in this situation with COVID, those permits are being extended until further notice.
Correct.
If you have not registered your property, then you need to do so still. You can do that via mail. And as we said, you can get electronic notary. If you are changing your rental, you still need to file an update form. You can do that via mail. Vicki, are you still on the line?
Yes. Yep. And I understand it's not illegal to advertise an Airbnb. What feedback I got after a code had come was the fact that the listings on Airbnb are flipping their houses every 3 to 4 days throughout the year. So there was concern about that. And then I had a lot of feedback from people saying, you know, I did the right thing and I did the rental registry, and yet there's people in town doing illegal rentals. And it's not fair to me because now I can't rent my home for the long term because there's these short-term rentals. So, and I even heard from businesses, hotels, they're saying that it's taking from them. So this is something that's been going on for a while.
Again, we recommend to the general public, if you're aware of a high volume, high turnover residence in your neighborhood, please report it to code enforcement. Give us the address so that we can enforce the local law there. And it, unfortunately, you know, laws are for those who need some further guidance. You know, we have directives, we have zoning, and the penalties are for those who don't obey. And actually, if people weren't, you know, undertaking certain activity, we wouldn't have to have laws about it. So
exactly.
I appreciate your calling, Vicki, and I just want to thank you again for your efforts with East Hampton Food Pantry. You guys are doing an amazing job for those who are, you know, in real dire straits right now. I know that the numbers that you're seeing have doubled and maybe even tripled as of this last week, and we'll talk later offline about that. I you know, do like to have that you know, weekly update from you to make sure that you're getting the funding that you need, that you're being able to get the food in to distribute. I know you've run out of food because the number of people showing up is outstripped maybe some of the, you obviously have to plan for how many meals you're going to prepare and how many food stocks per person and whatnot. And, you know, we're obviously seeing an uptick in demand. And I just want to thank you and all the other volunteers in all the food pantries who are helping to meet those very basic needs that many in our community are finding that they have.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We really have had such a outpouring of love and compassion from the community, and we really do appreciate that because we're all going through this together. And we will get through it, but, you know, it's been very, you know, difficult because we've really had to change our overall just the way we operate. But we're doing it. Today we'll be just, you know, distributing at 1 o'clock in the rain, but we'll be there either way.
Yeah, hopefully the rain's going to hold off. But again, thank you and everyone who's out there volunteering to help pull together and get us through this time. Jason, can we have the next caller, please, if there's someone on the line?
Hi, is that me? Am I on?
Morning, who's calling?
Thank you. It's Katie. Good morning. It's Katie Casey from the East Hampton Housing Authority.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, gang. How are you?
How are you? Very well. How are you?
Good. We're fine. Good.
Good.
I wanted to just briefly give you an update on the status at the Housing Authority. We have maintained our offices open. We have truncated hours, only one person in the office at a time. So if the phone's ringing, leave a message or call back, try again. We are not admitting people into the office. We have a small vestibule. We are cooperating with the East Hampton School District that has been incredibly generous, providing free lunches and breakfasts 7 days a week. We're serving as a distribution point We leave the outer door open. Anyone can come in and just help themselves. There's 2 coolers set up out there. So we are continuing operations, maintaining social distancing, and the staff have PPEs. One of our board members was kind enough to donate 2 respirators. The resident managers are still on site dealing with plumbing issues. We are not entering any occupied apartments unless there is a plumbing emergency or a heat emergency, and we're taking all the necessary precautions. So there's that. I just wanted to put that out there, that we are still taking calls and doing the mail and paying the bills and all that good stuff, which leads me to my next point, and that is collecting rent. HUD has put in motion a mechanism to deal with last-minute decreases in income for tenants that are subsidized. But as you are, I'm sure, well aware, we have one property in East Hampton, the Springs Fireplace Apartments, that is not subsidized. That is workforce housing. Those tenants pay an affordable rent. It's not quite market rent. It's a little below the open market, but they don't get assistance in paying their rent. They are hardworking people. Most of them actually are in the service, commercial, retail industry, a lot of restaurant, retail stores, service providers, and they have obviously unanticipated income losses, and there is not a mechanism in place to cover that, like an operating reserve or a deficit fund. So I sent on April 9th, I sent around an email to the town board. It was something that was discussed by the Housing Authority Board. I included Bridget Fleming in that email, as well as Diane Patrizio. When the federal government released the PPE and the SBA programs, at the same time they released another stimulus packet that didn't get a lot of attention, and that is for governments, municipalities. The Housing Authority cannot apply for the SBA or the PPE or any of those programs there for non-governmental agencies, but there is a coronavirus relief fund that is specifically for government entities, and there are 3 eligibility criteria: necessary expenditures that were not accounted for, that were incurred between March 1st and December 30th, 2020. So it is my hope that we may be able to secure some funds to cover 2 months' rent for all of the tenants at Springs Fireplace who have had income interruptions. I sent a letter around yesterday. Actually, there are 2 letters. There are also some tenants at Avalon out in Montauk. That's a little less critical, because it's a smaller project, fewer people, there's less of a financial impact there, but because Springs Fireplace is workforce housing, it's been very impactful. We already notified all the, sorry, I'm going on and on, I'm trying to get it all in. We already notified the tenants there would be no late fees, there's no, there would be no consequences, if you will, if those tenants paid a reduced rent, or if they could not pay their rent at all. We're working with all 26 units on a case-by-case basis, but the Housing Authority does not have a fund to cover that. We still have operating expenses at Springs Fireplace. So Bridget Fleming was very responsive. She got back to me. She's looking into it. We also communicated with Jason Smagan, who is in the Economic Development Office at the county. I think the county is looking to put together a grant. I think all Suffolk might be something in the order of $800,000. So that is, it's under consideration. The funds have to be claimed. They have to be dedicated by April 26th. So it is time sensitive. So I just wanted to, I did alert the board. I sent that around. This is probably your first opportunity to discuss it. I hope you will discuss it today. And I'm here. I'm available if there's anything I can do to facilitate.
Thank you, Katie. Jeff
Thanks,
is your
Katie.
liaison, and
Yeah.
as your liaison, I would ask that Jeff, you please work directly with Katie on this.
Yeah.
There is a pot of money, and I believe it's called the Municipal Relief Facility, that is available to governmental entities and would maybe encompass the housing authority in this particular case. So I'm sorry you didn't get a response earlier, Katie, but Jeff, if you could please, as her liaison, follow up.
Excuse me, Peter. She did get a response from me. I communicated with Katie.
Did you circulate that with us? And
what
have you done?
I communicated directly with Katie because I needed more information on this. And I think, Katie, I think you were talking about a total of like $89,000. Is that, if memory serves me, that was somewhere in the range of what you were looking for help on. So I did communicate with her.
Yeah,
and I also reached out to Tom Rule because Katie had talked to Tom Rule, and
I was concerned because Katie said that she hadn't heard from the board, and as you know, under the Unified Incident Command structure, and you were actually her liaison prior, that when she said she didn't hear, I just thought she meant she hadn't heard from you. So I apologize.
Well, she heard from me, and I appreciate Katie coming on and giving us the detail, because I was, just hearing it at the relatively late moment before the hearing. I needed a little further explanation on it to understand it. Tom Rule also weighed in and gave me some information. So anything I can do to help, I will do, and that includes reaching out to Bridget Fleming and the county. And so let's talk further, Katie.
Okay. I'm here. I'm in the office. If there's anything I can do to help. And I didn't mean to imply that no one had gotten back from me. My point was that this is your first opportunity to discuss it in a work session. The town would have to agree to participate on the county level, because the only way to apply for these funds is with a municipal entity with a catchment of 500,000, a population of 500,000 or more. So the town cannot apply on its own. It would have to partner with the county for the larger area.
So Jeff, if you'll follow up with the county on that to make sure that the application is made in a timely way, we'd appreciate that.
Yes.
Katie, can you give us just an update as to the status of Gansett Meadows?
Before we go there, I assume that we have a consensus of the board that we want to pursue this. I just want to make that formal.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and as quick as possible. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
So Katie, can you give us an update on Gansett Meadow, what the status there is? It's looking really good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hearing how we're doing with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We are going ahead with construction because affordable housing is essential. So we're proceeding with that. It might have slowed us down a little bit. It hasn't changed our projected completion date. It's just fewer people inside a building envelope, social distancing, staggering the trades, that kind of thing. But we are still on track. We have not yet released the applications, much to the consternation of the general public. Everybody's chomping at the bit to apply for this. We have tremendous interest in the project. We decided, with everything that's going on, now is not the time to release the applications, because anyone who is sick or quarantining, staying home, no transportation, it just would be difficult for many people to get an application, post it in the mail, do all that stuff. It just is too much going on. very distracting right now. So we're going to wait a couple weeks. We'll wait until May 15th and see what happens then. Hopefully we'll be able to release them at the end of May or beginning of June. The expected occupancy date is still sometime in September or October. September is preferred because we'd like to be in sync with the school district, the school calendar year, if possible. So that's where we are. We're proceeding and pretty much on track, but the applications got delayed yet again, and for that I apologize, but that was a conscious decision to hold off until things settle down a little bit.
Well, we appreciate the update, Katie, and we're looking forward to that project being completed and online. So thanks for calling in. Be well.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Jason, we have another call.
Hi, this is Dave. Thank you.
Good morning.
This is Dave Wood on a different topic now.
Who's on the? Excuse me. Could you just state your name for the record?
Yes, this is David Booth. I wanted to comment on the discussion about illegal advertising for short-term rentals.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to proceed. It's a little difficult. You should understand it's a little difficulty with the time delay having a conversation on the phone, but I'll try. I wanted to let everyone know, especially because of your unified command structure that's currently in effect, that everyone should, all code enforcing officials should take another look at Zoning Code 255-1165B, which creates a presumption of the existence of prohibited use where the owner or any other person having control over the occupancy or use of a single-family residence does place or cause to be placed or broadcast an announcement in any printed or electronic medium advertising that daily or weekly rentals are available or that any other use identified as prohibited in 255-1164 hereof is available or exists in the residence, there shall arise a rebuttable presumption that the activities, conditions, or uses advertised exist and are being maintained in such residence. If this is not an enforceable provision in our code, then it should be deleted. If it's enforceable, it should be enforced. Thank you.
I'm aware of that. Seems like it should be enforced. It's a rebuttable presumption.
Just to note that letters do go out to owners and to brokers based on those advertisements when we have a basis to mail them out. But again, once you get to court, it's a rebuttable presumption. It's not particularly, it's helpful, but it's certainly not
and again,
it's not enough to convict.
Question that I stated, that if you don't have an address, you can't even notify people. So it's one thing to see it on the internet. It's another thing to be able to actually find that owner and either cite them or buy them of anything. So that's really what the problem.
And they do try to locate it if they can tell by a visual. If there's a picture that they can identify, they'll try to find an address and an owner, but it's not always successful.
Thanks for calling, David.
Do we have anyone else on the line? If the identification of the owner can be made, a rebuttable presumption can be the basis for a complaint, and then it's up to the defendant to raise to rebut the presumption. Thank you.
Right. We understand that. I appreciate you calling. Thank you.
We currently have
Jason, do we have any other callers?
We currently have no other callers on the line.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to move on with our agenda topic items, which consist of a public safety update from Chief Sarlo. We have a financial update from our budget officer, Len Bernard, and a discussion about beaches and parks. Chief Sarlo, you're with us?
I am.
Welcome,
Can everyone
Chief.
hear me okay?
Before we get started, I just want to thank the Chief for his excellent job under what are really extreme circumstances that I don't think anybody could really predict, a worldwide pandemic. You've really run your department very efficiently and communicated very well with the public. And we're really happy to have you on board here. And just want to make that known and thank all of your staff and your officers for keeping us safe.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So basically, just to give everyone a public update on where we are and what activities we've been taking and how we've been focusing our efforts recently. Townwide, we have the police department, the Marine Division, the code enforcement department, fire marshals, building department, all working together to address the governor's orders and restrictions on essential businesses. While we also try to maintain our standard day-to-day enforcement and emergency response operations as well. We're out visiting all of the businesses that have been deemed essential on a regular basis. Grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores. We're checking on insured reduced occupancy, ensuring that masks are being worn by employees, as well as that distancing protocols for patrons have been established, and that they're enforcing, requesting any patrons to wear masks as well. We're out looking for littering violations. Obviously, it's very unfortunate. There's been some gloves and masks discarded in the parking lots at a lot of the food establishments, and we're out there actively trying to deter that and be a presence and look for violations for that as well. Patrols on a regular basis are also out looking for social distancing and trying to ensure that people are wearing masks when in those public places that they may not be able to keep the 6-foot distancing. That includes, if you're out for a stroll or a walk, or you're doing something on your own with your family, you should still have a mask with you available to pull up or put on should you bump into other people. That's coming on and off of a beach or going out into a trail. Just because you're on your own and don't intend on seeing someone, you should have a mask available to you to pull on should you go into that circumstance. So that's the kind of word we're trying to get out, and that's the public relations campaign we're pushing. And that's our goal in our seeking compliance during our patrol work. We're also out looking for construction sites, any type of work that's being done that might not meet the non-essential business operations. And we're also handling complaints about those from the public. Many of those complaints that come through, once are investigated, some of the businesses or construction sites may have a waiver from the state ESD they've applied for online. Whether that's for safety purposes or whatever other reason they may gain an exemption. And we ask for proper, appropriate paper documentation in those circumstances. We don't have any say how those waivers get granted. So when they present those to us, we document that, and we usually try to report back to either the complainant or to the county or the state, in fact, that they've presented us with the proper documentation. If they can't provide that appropriate documentation, we request that they cease operations immediately until they can provide it. We'll even go and make a referral to the state website ourselves. We also receive spreadsheets from the county enforcement task force regarding any online complaints that are made through the ESD to the enforcement task force. We assign a police officer to that. We review it, investigate it, and then we report our findings back to the county. We're still seeing a lot of laborers without masks, some with masks but not wearing them. And patrols frequently stop by and advise them to put the masks on and remind them of why that order is in place. We rarely ever get any pushback or non-compliance when we actively engage the public and make those requests. There's been a lot of discussion and complaints about social distancing, particularly in Montauk and on some of the beaches, as well as predominantly in the state parks in Montauk. We have been putting 4 additional police officers and 2 additional Marine Patrol officers out on weekends, specifically targeting the busier beach access areas, looking for social distancing and just spreading the word and being a deterrent. All of our officers report back that people are very compliant, very responsive. They see a lot of people taking the time to avoid others passing closely by. And for the most part, they try to spread out when they're out in public space. We have not had any circumstances where we've had a grouping or a small group of people that
Chief, I think we've lost your audio. Nate, Jason, we still have the chief on the line?
It looks like he has a frozen connection.
Okay. So I'll at this point, I'll just say that frozen connections
he's
and
back.
dropped internet issue in some locales. And we
Am I here?
Yes, Chief, go ahead.
Okay. So I was speaking that we've had, a lot of compliance and agreeable responses from the public when we're out on patrol. We really haven't had circumstances where there's been any grouping or people clustered that we've asked to comply and they've refused. It just hasn't happened. The state parks have been a challenge for us. There was a Newsday feature article about the scenic trails to enjoy with families in Suffolk County, and they featured the Camp Hero State Park trails. So with the nice weather over the past few weekends, we've been in contact with the state police, the state park police. I know the supervisor has advocated for us through the county executives conference calls, and we've had some increased presence, but I believe their state parks police staffing levels just don't allow them to have quite enough presence there to do what they need to do. So this past weekend, the state parks employees, not the police, they closed down a portion of the accesses to the state parks out there, Shadmore, Camp Hero, the Lighthouse, and that caused overflow parking out onto the roadways, onto Camp Hero Road, onto Route 27. And we dispatched several officers out and wrote about 30 tickets for parking in no parking zones. State did get some officers out here later in the afternoon, and they handled it from there. But with how much publicity has been given to the open space with the state parks, and even the governor mentioning that the state parks are open and for people to get outside, just observe social distancing, it's, those areas have caused us our largest influx of gathering of people within the township, and they are state lands and they are state jurisdiction. So I know the supervisor has been a big advocate for us, and we've been really trying to work with the state. I've been in direct contact with the troopers to gain some assistance, and we're hoping for a more coordinated effort with that moving forward. Overall, we receive about 3 to 4 calls a day of official complaints regarding either construction, ESD businesses, or social distancing. Our officers are continuously and actively patrolling all the beachheads, the parks, the open spaces. It's important to remind everybody we have over 70 miles of shoreline and over 100 access points to sand within our town. So, other than 1 or 2 of those clustered parking lots or the state parks, we're really not getting crowds or violations in any of these locations. We continue to work with Bruce Bates and the supervisor through our Unified Incident Command. We're still ensuring that there's adequate personal protective equipment available for all town staff. We're ensuring that proper protocols and employee screening is up to date. Continuing to communicate regularly with the county and all East End towns and villages, making sure we have a consistent enforcement strategy, and we're all consistent in the procedures that we're following throughout the East End. There has obviously also been almost daily changes to the essential business guides coming down from Albany, whether that pertains to marinas or golf courses, or now including pool openings as maintenance. It's a lot of juggling and a lot of information to get out to ensure that we're handling these properly. I just want to highlight an incident. Suffolk County there's a news article this weekend. Suffolk County actually had an incident in Port Jefferson over the weekend where in trying to seek compliance and sending an officer down on a complaint and requesting that an adult follow social distancing or put a mask on in public, and he refused. The enforcement action that had to be taken was ultimately he was arrested and charged with a public health law violation, misdemeanor. So one of the issues that we're struggling with in enforcement, we're being as active and aggressive as we can in getting the word out and ensuring people are following the governor's orders, but making a physical custodial arrest for a misdemeanor as our main mode of enforcement action creates a lot of challenges for us in taking someone into custody, putting them in a vehicle, bringing them into headquarters and processing them. We're creating exposure issues for the officer, for the individual, for the department. And, it's almost a catch-22 in order to take appropriate enforcement action. We're really trying to take as much proactive actions as we can to gain compliance to not have to do that. The East End Chiefs Association actually petitioned through Chief Cameron in Suffolk County and County Executive Malone to request one of the sections of the public health law that's cited through the executive order up to Albany, and to see if we could have that adopted so that we could issue it as a summons instead of a physical arrest, whether that's an appearance ticket or a traffic summons. There's obviously a lot of challenges in being able to prosecute that properly through the system once it's cited. So we don't really have a ticket that we can hand out to anybody for a fine for violating social distancing. So we're really asking the public to comply and do the right thing. And a lot of the people that have voiced their concerns, we try to just really assure them that if they continue to do everything the right way and assume everyone else has it and cover their face and keep their social distancing and follow all their hygiene, they're doing everything they can to protect themselves and their families, and hopefully we'll continue to have low numbers of spread here within the community. So basically, it's a frustrating process to try to gain compliance and get people to follow laws and rules that are uncomfortable for many people who are cooped up and want to get outside and want to get some activity. We're trying to work very hard with the community. For the most part, our local citizens have been very compliant and very supportive of our efforts. I really would like to thank many members of the community who've not only sent us nice notes, but sent some food and, just have done some really nice things for us here at the PD to show their support for us being out there 24/7. It's been great. And we really appreciate that support and respect from the community. We're just asking people to step up, be respectful of their fellow citizens, try to do the right thing, and help us understand we're not trying to police our way out of the pandemic. We're trying to do community support and really gain compliance so that we can all move forward from this. So that's my presentation for today. If any of the board members have specific questions, or if you want to discuss any other topics that we need to look at moving forward in the public forum, by all means, we can have that discussion now.
So, Chief, I just want to say that there's been, and I've been there right there with you with regard to the updates to the changing guidance on essential businesses and whatnot. And just so the public's aware, the governor has a press conference middle of the day, announces he's taking a step, and then we're waiting to get the actual guidance as to what it encompasses and what it covers. There's a process going on that, and then hitting the public and making the public aware that, for instance, a particular business which was deemed essential is now further restricted, or business that was restricted is now deemed essential. And it's going back and forth from, construction, which we had some initial concerns here locally, myself in particular, and I think the board also, that with a multitude of workers coming into town closely, working together and riding together in vehicles, that the spread of this disease, would take place much more rapidly here than it has. So we were happy to get the governor to take our concerns into account and to further restrict that business, because having a job site of 60 or 70 people working on a large mansion just is going to spread the disease that much quicker. Initially, pool maintenance was considered the sanitation of a home, and was therefore deemed essential. If your pool was already opened, the pool companies could maintain those pools. As the weather warmed, I got more and more concerned that we're setting ourselves up for major mosquito outbreaks if everybody has a stagnant pond basically in their backyard. Then you start running into other health concerns like Zika virus, West Nile, or equine encephalitis. So, this has been a really rapidly changing and very fluid situation with regard to governmental orders and the enforcement and adjustments to those. And the chief has really done such a great job on pivoting on a dime, really. And, you mentioned the parks. We are concerned about that 27 basically is a dead end road that ends in Montauk, and people go out on the island for a ride. They want to go to the lighthouse. That's a very popular spot. It's one of the most iconic places on all of Long Island. And so we did reach out to the state, and I brought that up on on my call with the governor's office and county exec several times. And while I support the overall idea of being able to get out and recreate, we don't want to promote tourism just yet in our town. So they've committed to, giving us additional resources in terms of personnel. That the park staff apparently are getting more overtime to increase the number of hours. And I've been assured that more enforcement agencies will be involved on the state level out here. Look forward to that. I hope that comes soon. And I think probably one of the major questions that we as a town board will be dealing with, and we've already begun on some levels, is how are we going to deal with our parklands and our beaches as the weather continues to warm? More and more people who find East Hampton a wonderful place to be, especially in the summer, want to come out and take advantage of that. So that's going to require really hard and careful thought. We need to be constantly tracking the way the disease is spread and the numbers of cases, the capacity of the hospital. We're going to have to be gauging this very carefully as we move forward. Are there questions for the chief?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple. And thanks very much, Chief Sarlo, for all the work you're doing. Do we have, numbers of essential workers that were concerned about providing PPE for in town hall that you can share? And can you give us any idea of what our supply of PPE is at the moment? Are we sort of constantly on the move trying to get this material to protect workers, or are we pretty well set up? And I'm just trying to get a better idea. I think it's probably something the public would like to know about what our supply and numbers are.
Sure. I don't have the exact numbers of the essential workers, throughout the town. It's maintained through Ed Michaels, who's our safety officer, and Bruce Bates, the emergency preparedness coordinator. Even though I'm part of UIC, I don't have that in front of me with exactly how many we have. And each department head we've set it up so that each department head, based on the scheduling of their employees, can communicate through the UIC and get the necessary masks and PPE that they need on a week-to-week basis to ensure that they're adequately supplied. We feel right now, based on the burn rate that we have and based on the supplies that we've been able to purchase or receive from the county, that we're in very good shape right now for about a 30 to 45 day window. And we're going to continue to seek to gain more PPE. We're not stockpiling to the point that we want to hurt any other municipality or put ourselves in a wasteful position, but we do want to kind of continue to prepare 30 to 45 days out ahead to make sure that we're prepared, continuing to follow that burn rate. We've also, not only we have 30 to 45 days out of supplies, but we're also starting to use a new piece of equipment that the town acquired for UV ray light sanitation of some of our own N95 masks. So following Southampton Hospital's protocol and several of the ambulance companies' protocols, there's a UV light sanitation process that can actually clean the mask completely and re-sanitize it so that it can be used again, and the officer can continue to use his N95 mask. So that's extending us down the road a little bit further. And just
Chief, I just want to jump in for a second, Chief, and just thank David Lease, who identified this equipment very early on and brought it to me, and we got that purchased. That really is going to be a game changer for us with PPE going forward. So I want to thank Councilman Lease for that.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, that's not a situation where if an officer goes on a call and is exposed, or if he deals with somebody who they think there could have been a potential exposure, all that equipment's getting thrown out. That's disposed of appropriately and it's gone. This is an officer keeps an N95 mask in his car. He gets out on 3 or 4 calls. He maintains social distancing. He uses it 4 days a week or so during his tour. And every week to 10 days, 2 weeks, we sanitize it and make sure that it's still functional and works before we reissue him another one. So that's pushing out our supplies a little further down the road by using that process. The exact numbers, Jeff, it's very difficult to pin down with the rotation of essential versus non-essential employees who are in and out of certain offices and the schedules that they've set up with their own employee exchanges within their own offices and who's in on which days and how often they're using their own supplies versus, a lot of it is now with facial coverings. If you're in an office and you have more than 6 foot social distancing space available to you and you're not in contact with the public, the burn rate goes down because you can use your own facial covering when needed. So people are making their own at home. They're using fabric. Obviously we're more than willing and have the ability to supply them with those materials, but it's not as necessary now under the current guidelines, especially with the offices being closed. And we're also looking at what types of other steps we can take moving forward as we try to reopen the town. Ed Michaels and Bruce Bates and I and a number of us have discussed ways to protect the employees, glass partitions, plexiglass partitions, things like that. So we're in the process of working through getting quotes on some glass partitions for separating the public at a countertop from the employees. Some of those type of longer term solutions that can be projects that are installed will lower the rate of use for the PPE down the road as well.
I'd like to just also interject here, Chief, if I can, that each department liaison. So Jeff, all the departments that you're liaison to, you should be checking with your department heads regularly.
Again, Peter, I have been checking with my people.
So if you let me, excuse me, Jeff, if you let me just finish the sentence, I'd appreciate it. So again, the way the Unified Incident Command goes is every liaison is to check with their departments to make sure that they're aware of the staffing levels, the use and burn rate of PPEs, and that's supposed to be forwarded up the chain to Bruce Bates so that we can continue to monitor that. Again, simple face covering in the setting, outdoors, in the public, indoors, in an office isolated. It's not difficult to do, can be washed at home, reused. So, many of our employees are using this in town hall. I'm in town hall, as you can see, in my office. And, we do have a limited number of actual employees in each department right now, but we're wearing those face coverings when we're outside of their offices so that if we pass in the hall, we're protected.
I just want to be very clear here that I've been in communication with those entities that I'm liaison to, and I was going to say that to the chief, but you got in there to make a comment before I did that. I'm familiar with those plans because I've gotten some of them in, and I understand that the number of employees varies. And yes, I have been in touch on that. I was just hoping to get something, a little bit more definitive on the numbers, but I'm not trying to put Chief Sarlo on the spot on that.
I just don't have it in front of me, and to be honest,
I know.
It can be a little challenging just based on distribution and receipt. So,
So I think the basic message here, and I've been in contact with Bruce Bates about maintaining the levels, and we're pretty well in good shape right now. But we're constantly still looking to acquire additional masks because it's not known how long this will go on. We know that PPEs are an integral part of flattening the curve and protecting both the public and our town workers. And so we're going to continue to look to acquire those PPEs whenever available. And again, they pop up for sale and we can buy a quantity. And then they're hard to find. And so we're constantly searching. I've spoken with Bruce about this. He's constantly on the lookout and we'll continue to maintain the levels that we think are important without overbuying and causing other entities to fall short.
Correct.
Chief Sarlo, I have a question for you, and it's primarily about how residents, if they see and want to question an activity of an essential business, can they dial, is it 311 to get to the county or to the ESD? Where is the contact point for the landing page that you're recommending residents contact, not to overburden?
Well, they basically have 3 options. They can go on the ESD website and file a complaint online. And I believe there's an 800 number there too, directly into a database in Albany that they can leave a phone message. They can call 311, which goes through the county task force on that, or they can call the police desk. And we respond and we go investigate these complaints and we look into it, and we will report back to the complainant and to the state if there's a referral that needs to be made. If it's an ongoing situation that you're just unsure of and you think it should be checked and you want to, make that notification to 311, it will circle back around to us within about 24 hours. 311 will intake it. 311 will make sure it goes through ESD. They may check it and determine whether it's allowable or not, or whether they have a waiver or not right there. And a lot of times they'll email back to the complainant, and then they'll forward that back out to the jurisdiction where the complaint originated. So if someone from Springs calls 311, enters that information, they'll send it up to the state. It'll go through the enforcement task force. It'll get emailed back out to us, and then we'll send an officer. It's 6 1, half dozen the other. The businesses, to be honest with you, the way the executive order is written and the controls and the accountability is much higher for businesses than it is for the individual citizen. So whether that's employees being forced to work, employees not being provided PPE, working outside of the guidelines of an essential business, there is a situation and a much cleaner way for the state to hold those businesses accountable through the public health law or the uniform code using the state AG's office. So by all means, there's 3 different means to be able to make that complaint. It will be followed through on and executed, and whichever someone is comfortable with. We're actively out there going, and we're handling the call at some point. Whether they call the police desk or go through 311 or send the email, we're going to send an officer at some point to check that situation out. So
Thank you very much.
Chief, can I just ask you quickly about landscaping again? I know it comes up all the time. Is the distinction between maintenance landscaping and landscaping that's like new material and is that the distinction that is
technically? Yeah, technically what it states is they're not supposed to be doing new installations of plantings. It leaves some gray area to, the problem that we are really seeing is there's delivery of stock that has previously been ordered of larger planted trees that are being brought down from upstate New York or Vermont and shipped into a location and dumped on property. So some of the complaints we're getting and some of the waivers that have been granted is, you have $10,000 worth of trees dropped off on a property and it's going to die if they don't install it. So some of these people have gotten waivers through ESD. Some people we've addressed with them and said, you got to stop until you get it. And, they've had to keep that plant watered and they've had to do what they can to do before they continue to go ahead and plant it. But technically the way the law was written under the executive order is it's for maintenance of the property and regular routine upkeep of landscape material and not new installation.
Okay. So you could repair a fence but not put a new fence in.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's through Ag and Markets.
Yeah.
Ag and Markets is assisting that.
Correct.
Right. I was going to mention that horticulture, Ags and Markets further confused the whole landscaping issue initially.
Yes.
But again, it's supposed to, as the chief said, it's only supposed to be maintaining the existing landscape that you have, not building anything new, no new retaining walls, no new fences, no new plantings, essentially. And, frankly, that landscaping is not, and I have a number of friends who have landscaping businesses, but, some of the landscaping early on, I felt like we could have held off on that. The grass isn't really growing all that fast right now. Let it go for a little while. You don't need to be out there with leaf blowers. I think that just causes additional safety concerns. I still see landscapers, many traveling in single vehicles, not wearing masks. I think, again, this is a very fluid situation and we're trying to adapt to it as quickly as possible and do the best thing to protect the greatest number of people. So I appreciate again the chief's quick pivoting and adjustments to these ever-changing regulations and executive orders. That has consumed a great deal of time of both the chief and myself in order to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep people safe. Any other questions for the chief? Chief, again, I just want to thank you. We really appreciate you and your staff and all the officers who are out there keeping us safe in these difficult times. And we have a ways to go yet. hang in there. We're here to support you in any way we can.
Thank you very much. Just before I get off, I want to say thank you to all the board members, being patient, keeping in communication with me and the Unified Incident Command. There's a lot of changes. Things are very different from the normal course of business, and we appreciate the patience. I really want to send a note of thanks to Bruce Bates, our emergency preparedness coordinator, who is a part-time civilian employee who works through the emergency and fire rescue services to help us. And he's all hands on deck 24/7, answering every email, phone call, text message, and he's been absolutely phenomenal. I really want to thank him a lot. And Peter, your guidance and your how strongly you've stood up for the town in the county conference calls, and how much you've helped us gain clarity on some of the executive orders and some of the changes that have come about, and how quickly we've been able to get that word out. I truly appreciate your support and contact. And we talk way too often, and we text and email way too often, but it's appreciated. And I thank you very much for your guidance in all this as well.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe out there. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next up, we have a financial update. I know Kathy had reached out to me, and she was wondering how we were doing. And Len had sent out an email not that long ago, just talking about our first quarter, and that's something we're tracking on a regular basis. And to date, our first quarter looks really pretty strong. Obviously, the majority of the impacts from the COVID-19 outbreak and pandemic have yet to be felt, and but it's something that we need to be cognizant of moving forward, and need to be potentially making adjustments as our revenues for permits and mortgage tax from the county, et cetera, may be impacted. So Len, with that introduction, you want to tell us where we are and what we think about going forward?
Yep, like you said, first quarter we pretty much hit our revenue marks after doing a comparison to the first quarter last year. We were pretty much on mark with what we normally gather, in non-tax revenues through the first 3 months. Of course, in April, we've seen that slack off, primarily due to the fact that, number one, we're not open to the public in terms of them being able to walk in and get permits and get licenses and get renewals. And also due to the fact that the board has actually extended the deadlines for some of those permits, like sanitation permits, building permit renewals, things like that. So the big question really is, when do we kind of reopen as a town and as a seasonal town, and will we have a summer season and a full summer season where we can expect non-tax revenues to pick back up like we normally see in the second, and especially the latter part of the second quarter of the year, May and June and into July. Just to give you a little perspective, we still have about $1 million in non-tax or non-property tax fees and revenue that, we still need to collect in the A fund. A lot of those are, permits and licenses and things related to the summer season. About 1.6 million in the B fund, and those are primarily building fees. And hopefully, this emergency will not, in the long run, impact those building fees. And then about 2.4 million in sanitation permits and fees. So again, the sanitation department is open. Sanitation is actually taking in revenue like it should, right through the first quarter and even into April. So because that facility has been open. It's kind of been a place where people can go to get out of the house, quite frankly.
Everybody's cleaning out their closets, Len. So,
right.
Those have dump permits or, good things.
So the big question is going to be, how do we come out of this? And the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to be very important. Memorial Day weekend, which, it will indicate, how busy we're going to be, what you guys do in terms of opening the town. And of course, some of the things you do are going to be dictated by what the county and state does. So, taxes, another area. Obviously, this is a tax collection season. We have collected about 65% of our property tax warrant, which is good, and which is about where we normally are going into May. As you know, the other 35% is due May 31st. That hasn't changed as of yet. My gut tells me we're gonna get our full collection, and we're gonna get it by May 31st. I can't guarantee it, but I think we will. If we were to fall a little short, we would have to make some adjustments. We'd have to work with the school districts would be impacted probably more than us in terms of not getting a full collection. But again, I don't want to alarm anyone, because I really do think that we're gonna meet that 100% collection mark by the end of May. So that's kind of that's going to be a big date, seeing where we are with tax collections by May 31st, and then into June, how we are with non-property tax revenue. By the end of June, we'll know where we are with taxes. We'll kind of know where we are with the summer season and fees and permit fees. We'll know more about where we are with construction and building permits, renewal of building permits, new building permits. And we'll also have some idea as to what our mortgage tax revenue is going to be. Right now, I've been trying to get a number for the first 3 months. We don't get paid our mortgage tax until 90 days after the end of a quarter. So we don't get our first mortgage tax payment for 2020 until the end of June. But I do normally get the preliminary numbers from the county as the money comes in. And I've been trying to do that for the first quarter. It haven't been too successful. So hopefully the county will, send us those preliminary numbers, and we'll have a better idea as to where we are with mortgage tax.
So Len, I'll follow up with the county on that to see if I can get them to respond. Obviously, they're kind of all hands on deck with COVID-19, and similarly, many of their departments are staffed at lower levels. But I will reach out with my connections and see if we can get that number to you.
And so that's really it. I mean, I don't. One of the things I wanted to talk about and to finish up is talking about, we do have some surplus, which is a great thing. And I think this emergency has illustrated how important it is to have a buffer in our finances. We do have, pretty ample surplus actually in all funds, but in the general fund, which, basically pays for most of our operations. We do have ample surplus, and we've always said that surplus is there to be used in the case of an emergency or for one-time items. We always thought that we would probably need it as a result of a hurricane or some kind of natural weather disaster. I don't think we ever thought about something like this, but this is exactly why we have a surplus. That surplus could theoretically keep us going for 3 months if we had no income whatsoever. So it's a nice buffer to have, and it's something that we want to maintain. Hopefully we won't need to eat into it too much as a result of this emergency. But like I said, the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to be the important period that's going to tell us, where we go for the rest of the year. Now, if we find that we're running, we're going to have a shortfall in revenue, then we'll maybe have to take some action come July, and that action would probably be related to spending, because that's something that we do have some control over. We do have to pay staff, we have to pay salary, we have to pay benefits, we have to pay the utility bills, but there's a certain amount of, I don't want to call it discretionary spending because it is budgeted for, but spending that can be put off or delayed. And that would be something that we would have to look at come July if we find ourselves in a situation where we're coming up, short on our revenues.
I think we should be.
I don't think we're going to get to that, though.
We should be identifying those line items now.
I agree.
And figuring out what they amount to monetarily, and just be so we're ahead of it. We don't have to get into that situation, then decide where we're
Right, and there are techniques that we use once we get into that. I mean, I have been in this situation before in the past, not here in East Hampton, but in another municipal unit that I worked at, where we had to actually freeze part of a budget line. You know, the budget line, just to give an example, $3,000 for X. Well, you know what? We're not going to do the full X. We're going to do partial X. So we would freeze $1,500 and leave $1,500 free. And so those are the kinds of things you can do. I don't think we're going to get to that point, but it's something, like you said, that maybe we should think about now and identify some of those items. So I'll work on that.
And additionally, you know, I agree with your comment that we'll have a much better sense of where things are heading in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Right now, you know, things could improve relatively quickly. If we get on the path to improvement, they could plateau and just kind of stay at this level, or they could, you know, get worse. They could get better and then worse. You could get a second wave. And I think, you know, it's really a basic question that everybody struggles with, regardless of what you're doing or where you're from right now. How long is this going to last? What are the impacts going to be, you know, both on a personal level to everyone, and, you know, how is it going to impact whatever they do for a living, or, you know, for us, it's obviously how's it going to impact the budget. That's our discussion right now. So,
I mean, and again, the first item is going to be obviously the remaining tax collection, and because that's going to happen over the next month or so, and the school districts are very interested in that. I've gotten a number of emails from the business managers at the various school districts. You know, we are still getting money in, tax money in. Even this is kind of the slack period. The last 2 weeks of May are really it will be when the bulk of the remaining 35% will come in, but we're still getting tax money coming in. And in fact, we're doing a tax distribution today to the school districts and some of the town funds. So,
if the salt tax issue had come up this year instead of the previous, you know, everybody would have been trying to pay.
Yeah, they would have all. I thought about that. Everything would have. Yeah, I mean, the first year of the salt exemptions going away. I think we collected about 70% of like by the second week of January.
Right, exactly. So,
we actually collected it before January 1st, but the money, you know, got into our bank accounts like by the middle of January. 70% of it came in before January 1st. So
the other issue that impacts this is whether or not that money is a mortgage and the money's escrowed and paid by banks. Because that money's already been collected in those situations.
And that's about and that's why
many of the houses in this town and others are you know, self-paid. They're not carrying mortgages, and you know, that could be somebody who's, you know, elderly, paid off their mortgage, but it could also be somebody who's wealthy enough to just buy the house on a cash basis. And so it's, you know, it's difficult to know exactly how that sifts out.
And as you know, based on your discussions with me, and we've had, you know, several about moving the due date for the taxes back beyond the 31st of May. I'm not a big advocate of that, but what you described earlier as kind of the compromise, where if somebody really is in a tough situation where they can't make that tax payment, I think that, you know, for them to come in with some kind
of trying to get done. That's what we're trying to get done right now. And there's,
I think that's a good compromise.
With the county about this, you know, the county, we believe, has the authority to extend and waive based on a section of the county 27A section of the county tax code. They would have the ability to do that. Obviously, they need to have their money so that they can pay their bonds on time. That's the issue for them. That's an issue for villages as well. They need their money sooner rather than later. So again, if you just, and it remains to be seen how those details work out regarding how you would qualify as someone being impacted to the point where you couldn't pay your taxes. You know, there has to be a process that obviously is set up to make sure.
And it gets a little complicated because I don't think a lot of people know this, that on the 31st of May is the last day you can pay your taxes through the town. So after the 31st, if you come in on June 1st to pay your taxes, you have to pay your taxes through the county.
Yeah. And that happened to me once. And let me tell you, I'm never going to let that happen again, because not only was it difficult to get them paid, but it got expensive very quickly. So, if you can pay your taxes on time, I suggest you do so.
But that provision has to be accounted for when they decide if they're going to have hardship cases. The county has to decide how they're going to implement that and how that's going to fit in with that with the law that says after the 31st. And it's tough to tell someone on June 1st when they walk in, and Carol is a new tax receiver, but she's probably heard these stories. It's tough to tell someone when they walk into the tax receiver's office on the 1st of June to pay their taxes that, sorry, your account is closed with the town, and we've handed it over to the county, and you have to pay through the county. Right? And that's what happened. Yeah, that's what you're describing.
That's what happened to me, 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, that process has to be. I
literally missed it by, a day or two.
Right, and that process has to be taken into consideration when they come up with this hardship, this hardship process. Because really, when you think about it, if you haven't paid by the 31st, the county the county can really do pretty much anything they want. So the county's in a unique position where they could structure this hardship, saying, "Okay, give us your hardship claim, and since we're holding the tax bill, we can waive your penalty and interest and give you an extra 30 days. So it's kind of in their ballpark, because I don't think Carol, who's our tax receiver, should be put in a position where she has to decide whether it's a hardship or not.
Right. Well, that's really where the discussions are focused right now. It's really working out a potential process and criteria for who would qualify and under what circumstances. Obviously, there's some complicated issues there to sort through, but that's the current status of the tax due date and where those discussions are with the county.
Right.
Are there anything else, Len? Any questions for Len? Board members?
Actually, if there's no questions, I would be remiss if I did not thank my staff, because really they've done a great job. We've worked out a schedule where I think they've been responsive. There's always somebody there, between purchasing, and they've done a great job getting the equipment and the materials that are needed for this COVID emergency, working with the different departments, payroll. Everybody in the town has gotten paid the last month, because in case people out there don't know, we do our payroll in-house. We don't have an agency that we send our payroll out to. So they've done payroll, accounts payable, getting the bills paid, getting our bills paid, and our regular accounting staff, just accounting for, our revenues and expenditures, and HR, again, doing all the staffing things that still need to be done, even in these tough times. So I just want to thank my staff for doing a real good job, and Charlene for really organizing the office in a very efficient way, and that's it.
Thank you, Len. And as I said at the onset of the meeting today, we're really thankful for all the dedicated staff members who really have persevered under what are extraordinary circumstances. We haven't seen this in generations, a worldwide pandemic. The last one was in 1918. Hopefully, this is the last time we have to use any kind of emergency funding out of surplus for a pandemic. Hopefully, we get through this soon. But I really do appreciate everybody's efforts to keep us moving forward, keep the town employees' paychecks coming in, and all the help from all the different departments. It's really been an extraordinary effort on everyone's part.
Okay.
So thanks, Glenn.
Thanks. I'm going to sign off. Bye, everybody.
So the last agenda item for today is a discussion of beaches and parks, and the chief touched on that in his report on public safety. a little bit. We, on the one hand, are pretty used to having all these opportunities to go out to various, state parks, county parks, town parks. We have a lot of parkland in the town. It's a great opportunity to get some fresh air and exercise while socially distancing. However, we need to continue to remind the public to do this in a manner that is safe for themselves and safe for others. And to that end, several weeks ago, we put up signs at the road beach ends. The weather really wasn't that nice yet, but in anticipation for greater use of the beaches, we wanted to remind everyone that social distancing is the rule of the land right now and for the foreseeable future. We also added an additional sign that said, please help us maintain social distancing so that we don't get in a position where we have to close some of these public beaches and parks to the public. So there's a fine balance, I think, that has to be struck and adjusted going forward. We want to be able to get out, recreate, release a little stress of being cooped up in the house for weeks at a time. But we want to do so in a way that doesn't put others in danger or in ourselves. So David put together a few photographs just to sort of act as talking points. And, I think, David, here we see a photograph of Shadmore State Park this past Sunday, where the state had agreed to step up their enforcement and management of their parklands because I had raised concerns, and members of the public had raised concerns about just the number of people coming out here to recreate. And a lot of folks are coming out for the day tripping, which is all well and good, but obviously it can have the potential for overloading our parks. And here you see the park has been closed off when they decided it had reached a certain capacity that was safe, and then they closed down parks. That's well and good, but as we know, in response to that, numbers of people were then parking along the highway in no parking zones, which led to, as the chief said, at least 30 additional parking tickets. And maybe back to Len's discussion about revenues, maybe we see revenues go down on the one side and parking tickets in this particular case go up, keep coming out and not abiding by the parking regulations that might offset some of our revenue loss from permits. But so again, this is a work in progress. It's something we need to be focused on. As I said earlier in the meeting, I will be participating in a county-wide special working group. I want to make sure that East Hampton's voice is heard loud and clear about our approach to the summer and to the crowds that could potentially come. I want to make sure that we have a seat at that table. So that first meeting with the county exec and other tomorrow, as the weather continues to warm, I think there'll be more and more use of our parks and outdoor spaces. Many of our walking trails are somewhat narrow. We know that as the weather warms also that the ticks become more active. So trails that may not have been used last summer just because of the number of ticks in the surrounding woods, many people may be coming and using those unaware. So I think maybe that's another bit of signage that we could put out warning people to be careful about ticks. David, do you want to give us an update on the recreational facilities when we talk about parks? I know as liaison to parks, you were tasked with getting the word out, posting signs at town park facilities and playing fields. Give us just remind the public what we've done to date and what our plans are.
Yeah, so to date right now, the Parks and Recreation Department, in conjunction also with Buildings and Grounds, the staff has been absolutely wonderful to work with right now. All the park facilities have been closed as far as the Montauk Skate Park and also the Amagansett Youth Park. We removed the basketball nets and the basketball courts within the township. We removed the volleyball nets also, and we actually removed the tennis nets. Lo and behold, the craftiness of our residents and visitors. This weekend, when I was coming past Abraham's Path by the Terry King Field, there was a family that was playing tennis by putting duct tape across the tennis court instead of a net. We requested them to leave, and then the new request now has been to, we actually have chained the gates at our tennis facilities. I think Peter mentioned it correctly. When the weather starts getting better right now, people are going to want to go outside and keep moving. We have over 22 parks in the township of East Hampton, multiple dozens upon dozens of trailheads and over 100 miles of trails. But there is an influx of traffic that is coming out here. We convened a working group recently with the town's head lifeguard, John Ryan Jr., the department head, Marine Patrol, myself, and others to start looking at how the beaches might be moving forward in this epidemic, or as we start to open up from that, including patrolling, lifeguarding, and other sections that would have to be determined in coordination with the county and specifically Suffolk County Department of Health. And Peter is going to take that up to the county working group. But I want to make sure that anyone that participates on ocean recreation in the summertime and to Lifeguard Association, the junior lifeguarding program, that we are taking a deep dive into that to get ahead of that. And that your voice out here, which I believe is one of the lead voices for all recreation and lifeguarding activities within not just Long Island, but in the country, is very going to be very well heard the county-wide discussion and looked at comprehensively. So that's ongoing and starting, and we're moving forward. And let's just be honest, we're about a month away from Memorial Day. So we're going to looking at our staffing levels, which we've already hired on. Staffing, we're going to continue the staffing levels to make sure we try to move forward as we come out of this. So that is my my quick thing about recreation.
Yeah, so we don't really know at this point, the trajectory of the disease here locally and on Long Island, but so we need to remain flexible in order to deal with that. But the basic question is, will we be able to have our beaches open? If we have them open, will we be able to allow swimming in a safe setting? Will we be requiring social distancing, putting out a grid work on the beach and saying, okay, this is your square, you need to maintain such and such distance, and having corridors so people can walk through without getting close to each other? It's just a myriad of questions, because there will undoubtedly be a great deal of pent-up energy and people will want to go to the beaches. So we need to be thinking about how to manage that in an orderly and safe way. If we have our beaches closed with no lifeguards and no swimming, that doesn't mean people aren't going to swim. I think it would be naive to think they're not going to swim in the ocean, which raises one of John Ryan's greatest concerns, and that is water safety. We have a zero tolerance here under our lifeguarding program, which is a phenomenal program and recognized all over Long Island and beyond as being a great one. A zero tolerance to having a drowning here on our beaches. And they've worked so hard for so many years to keep our public safe. That will be an additional challenge this year, I believe, especially if we don't have the ability to have guarded beaches. People will still want to go in the water. So it just brings up a whole myriad of issues that we need to be thinking about. Another one, David mentioned, Suffolk County Department of Health will need to be involved. Well, the reason they need to be involved is in order to have a public swimming beach, you have to provide bathroom facilities, and they have to be, potable water has to be there as well. So will we be opening up our comfort stations? And if so, how are we going to do that in a way that's sanitary and safe and prevents the spread of the disease? So there are a lot of issues that surround this. We want to be out ahead. We want to be out ahead of it. So just to give the public an idea and the other board members, these are the kind of things that we're thinking about. We're going to need to have, the input of other board members and the community at large. This is going to be an ongoing discussion, but we need to be out ahead of this.
Well,
And I feel very confident that the working group that we convened right now has decades of experience on our ocean fronts right now, and they're looking at a very comprehensive look. Anything Peter mentioned about the bathrooms, the health departments, the recertification of our guards, and PPE specifically for our lifeguards, and then also access points. Do we have access points for entrances or exits? And it's just not town beaches. We are looking at all the private entrances to the beaches, and also other locations where there are lifeguards, which have recently been deemed non-essential by the state, which I disagree with personally. We're looking at all the other businesses that might employ lifeguards, private clubs also. So we're going to look at this comprehensively with the town, because as we know, if they're not going to go to the town, they're going to go to some other locations. We want to be well in front of this right now, well voiced when it goes to the county and also to the state level. So Peter, I thank you for that.
Yeah, the job description of what a lifeguard's duties are may change somewhat too. It may also be extended to, be beach patrol in some way. They are routinely given radios and do communicate with the police and Marine Patrol as needed. But I think, in order to have a really fully thought out and comprehensive approach to the various scenarios and possibilities moving forward as to closure, limited opening, more fully open, there's a range of things that could happen depending on, the progress we make against this disease. But without a doubt, there will still be a great deal of pent up and desire to use our beaches.
I wanted to say one thing I've heard from other jurisdictions that are dealing with COVID and beach access are policies that permit people to access the beach, to walk on the beach, to go in the water, but not to lie on the beach and sun themselves, because it gets difficult to control crowds when people, even if they're single, are lying on the beach and sunbathing. So I've heard of other instances where people can go on the beach, walk and leave. They can go in the water and leave. They can surf and leave. But that's the kind of limited access. And I understand we haven't discussed the range of fact patterns that we may be dealing with in terms of the severity of the spread of COVID, but it is something that struck me as a practical way to allow people access and recreation, and at the same time controlling the massing of people, which is the dangerous part in this kind of a pandemic.
Right. We have seen.
You also have to. Sorry. I think what you have to also look at, Jeff, right now is also what the working group is looking at is the phases also. And the more information we get, the more phases we might be able to open up. So I have a lot of confidence in this working group. I'm happy that they're getting in front of this, and we'll keep presenting this to the board as they keep meeting.
Who is the working group? Is this the?
It is the Chief Lifeguard John Ryan Jr.,
County executive, and some supervisors within the towns on Long Island.
Okay,
that's the county.
This is what you were talking about. This is what you were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, Peter. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. So, again, we need to be able to be somewhat nimble. We need to be having foresight to try and consider the various options and impacts. How would you go about limiting beach access if that was necessary? Would you restrict the number in the parking lots? Would it be every other space available? Would you have certain, corridors where people can walk onto the beach and others where they exit the beach? So there are a number of different approaches that you could take depending on what the specific, situation was in terms of the disease itself. I think we have to be thinking of various scenarios at the same time, monitoring the progress we make against this disease. So that will inform our decisions going forward. Are there any other questions or comments, discussion about beaches and park at this point?
The only other thing I would like to just state one last thing is information, getting information out to the public. Also, Jason, I'm just going to put something on there quickly. Please stay home, stay safe. For more information, always go to our town website or the East Hampton Town Facebook page for information. Of course, once the township makes any decisions, we put it on there or we try to share information. If you have the time, go to any of these sites, okay? It'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. At this point, we have some liaison reports. Members have reports.
So the town Human Services Department continues to provide assistance to seniors and other community members in need. They operate Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at their offices on Springs Fireplace Road. And those in need of assistance should call the department at 631-329-6939. Human Services staff continues to prepare and distribute well-balanced, nutritious meals for town residents age 60 and over. Upon request, 5 frozen meals along with oatmeal, fresh fruit, and tea bags are being distributed to seniors. Last week, meals included Virginia ham with baked beans and broad beans, battered cod, sweet potatoes, and French green beans, and eggplant rollatini with peas. So it's got quite the diversity, and
I'm getting up now.
Healthy and well balanced.
Sounds great.
12:45, Kathy. Time for lunch.
So last week, 259 seniors received the meals prepared by the town's nutrition program, and that translates to about 1,300 meals per week. So all told, we have distributed 3,900 meals since the senior center closed back on March 10th. To manage the distribution of these meals, the Human Services Department has established a weekly delivery schedule. About 1,000 meals are delivered directly by the staff to seniors' homes, and 300 meals were picked up curbside at the senior center on Springs Fireplace Road. The Human Services Department are making calls to those 60 seniors that have picked up their meals curbside to let them know that they must wear masks this week when they come to pick up their meals. And if they don't have a mask or can't wear a mask, that we will deliver those meals. So according to the schedule, for instance, Monday we go to Montauk. We delivered about 250 meals, and that's close to about 20% of all the meals that we've distributed. We just want folks to know if they want to participate in this program, they just need to make a phone call to Human Services. So talking, thinking through what Len was presenting earlier, we are preparing, 3 times the number of meals than we normally prepare in a given week, right? Having prepared 1,300 meals. So at some point, we may have to make a budget modification to our food line to accommodate that. One of the places we could look, we know that the Montauk Nutrition Program is closed in the Playhouse because we are delivering, to 50 clients in Montauk. We may be able to look for, tap that budget line first. We also continue weekly to to personally check in with our seniors. There are 500 or more seniors that are getting phone calls to determine that they're feeling well and if they need any type of assistance. And for those folks that are feeling socially isolated, we are making daily wellness calls. I want to remind folks that we do deliver groceries, prescriptions, and other essentials. Our town staff and local volunteers are available to pick up and deliver free of charge groceries, prescriptions, and other essentials. We just need to make sure that the seniors have called ahead, and as we can only pick up prepaid phone orders. And they must first call Human Services to receive a delivery window, and then they can place the order with the local merchant. East End Cares is continuing their program. They have a volunteer buddy system. 35 of our seniors are participating in that program, and they wanted me to mention that they have other volunteers. So if other folks out there would like an East End Cares volunteer and have them do some extensive grocery shopping for them, they should email East End Cares at eastendcares1@gmail.com. Now, I've been in touch with a number of the food pantries out here, and we know that there are a great number of town residents who are struggling with mass unemployment and food insecurity. And we see this, I don't know if folks saw the ads that East End Cares had created and were running on Facebook, and then apparently David Rattray at the Star saw it and now has it online on the Star. But I don't have the share a screen here, so I'm just going to hold it up so that folks can see it. And it says, this isn't a line to get to the beach, it's a line to get to the food pantry. And for instance, that was
a great article. That was a great picture.
Out in Montauk. The Springs Food Pantry, just to give you an idea, used to have pickup between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Wednesday afternoons. Pickup is now from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Part of it is the social distancing, but most of it is just the staggering number of folks that are coming to avail themselves of the groceries. So Springs Food Pantry experienced last week 150% increase in the number of members that they served versus a year ago. So they served over 588 individuals last week. Last year, their weekly budget was approximately $1,500. And this week, they're looking to quadruple that budget. So not only are they having pressure, that they've have such an increase in the number of people that are availing themselves of the food pantry, but they're also seeing in some instances there's food inflation. For example, in January, 15 dozen eggs cost them $17. Now it costs them $58. So they are having some issues with not only with the increase in the number of folks that they're serving, but also they are experiencing some food inflation. But I'd also like to note that it's not just the local food pantries that are fighting the battle of food insecurity. Many not-for-profits have expanded their mission to provide groceries so that our neighbors won't go hungry. For example, the East Hampton School District, which Katie had mentioned when she talked about the Acabonic Apartments, has been providing free breakfast and lunch for any child aged 18 and under, and now they have distribution points. There's one over by Oakview Highway, Acabonic Apartments. There's one at the Springs Presbyterian Church. And last week, they distributed 2,345 breakfasts and 2,345 lunches free of charge to any child 18 and under. You don't have to be in the Springs School District. And organizations such as I Try and OLA are also helping families secure groceries. So I just ask, as we've asked before, please donate what you can to any of these local organizations to help ensure that, nobody goes hungry. And then I know David had talked about, he put the slide up, about getting information from the town. So I'd like to do 2 PSAs. One is, as David mentioned, for the latest news on the town's response to COVID-19, follow, and on Instagram and at Facebook, you go to the @ symbol, it's @Town of East Hampton. And also, if you please, we recommend that you sign up for email and text alerts at ehamptonny.gov and click on Stay Connected. And then we talked last week about the census. And I know, Sylvia, you had mentioned you hadn't done it, and I hadn't, said anything, but I hadn't done it yet either. So I did it this week. I timed myself less than 10 minutes. So we ask you to go to my2020census.gov. What I did learn from Sandra Dunn at OLA this week is only folks that get mail delivery got the envelope that gave them the code to do their, take the census. That if you have a post office box, you weren't getting those deliveries because they had some kind of rule that it had to go to the household. So for those folks in Amagansett and Montauk that may not have gotten a reminder and a code to fill out the census, you can still go on and fill it out. There's a button to push. So please, once again, my2020census.gov. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And while the deadline for filling out the census has been extended, we ask that you don't wait. This is a really good time to go ahead and get it done. You may be social distancing in your home for hours a day. This is a nice little thing. And Kathy's 10 minutes, so
Less than 10.
less than 10. So
Thanks,
I've
Kathy.
already done mine. I did mine several weeks ago. Actually, I should say that Marilyn filled it out for me. Thanks, Marilyn. And okay, Jeff, do you have a liaison report?
Well, actually, most of my liaison report was going to be talking about East Hampton Housing Authority, which I'm happy that Katie came online to talk about in response to my communications to her and to Tom Rule. So I just wanted to take a minute actually to ask a question, because I've been also examining what's going on with the food pantries, and it's partly motivated by that picture that was posted on Facebook and that is in the advertisement now in the Star. And what I wanted to ask, Kathy and Peter and David and Sylvia is, can't we? Why can't we immediately make ourselves donors to the 3 or 4 services that are being provided by the members of the community, specifically the food pantries and Meals on Wheels? Why can't we give, say, $10,000 to each of those food pantries today? And I'd include in that the East End Cares group, because they're doing such a tremendous amount of volunteer work. I know that Jay Schneiderman is working on a kind of a regional donation plan, and I know that Kathy has mentioned approaching these institutions via some people that have contacted her. But I just wanted to say that if I were in a position to give $10,000 to the food pantry, that would be a big personal contribution. And our government is really ourselves, and I think it's a good thing that our affluent community is engaged and willing to help out. It's a very good thing. At the same time, I also think that our local government has a responsibility to participate. We're the stewards of residents' health, safety, and well-being. So I would just ask. I was in communication last night with East End Cares, and they were really anxious to get $10,000 together, because they had an order for masks that they could have gotten, but they have, as the market has become very competitive and you have to act quickly, and they couldn't get the money together. So what I'm asking is, can't we do this immediately today and give, say the 3 food pantries, Meals on Wheels, and East End Cares, $10,000 contribution from the town each?
Yeah. So Jeff, just so you're aware, I'm in constant contact with those organizations. And one of the primary questions I always ask them is what your funding level is like right now. What are the problems that you're having, if any? How can the town help? And the response I've gotten every single time I've called, and as you heard earlier, I had called Vicki Littman for this week's update, and she hadn't gotten back to me. So we'll have that call afterwards. She said she'd give me a call back after the meeting. So we're monitoring that continually, and we stand ready to step in and help out at any point that there's a gap or a shortfall. You mentioned Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. He and I are working together for a larger umbrella fundraising for all the food pantries, and the All for the East End, the athlete organization that was around some years ago. It's been reactivated for that purpose. So we are actively working to put together additional fundraising efforts specifically for the food pantries. I don't think at this point there's a direct need from town government to step in. We again are waiting in the wings and monitoring that situation. I suspect, and I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect that we're only just starting to see the economic impacts of this pandemic, and that we will be in this for a much longer haul. And a lot of that depends on how quickly our local economy can recover. But as you know, we are a seasonally based economy. And without a season, that could have long-lasting impacts. And folks who are not used to being in a situation of food security may find themselves in that. So again, I think we have to be in this for the long haul. We need to continue to stay in touch with all of those organizations, which we have been doing, and to be able to step in. I agree. There is a responsibility the town government fills in that aspect, but we're not there yet.
I just want to make one comment, and it is that I think, again, we're fortunate that we have an affluent community that is rising to the occasion. And I've spoken to the food pantries too, and their demand has really increased tremendously. And I just think we really should ask ourselves, why it seems to be incumbent that we depend on the wealthiest residents to do what is essentially the government's job. And I think it's not only the immediate need, but there's a sense in which, and this is a small amount of money I'm talking about in terms of town expenses. $50,000 is not going to make or break our quarter or our future in the town of East Tampa. But I think it's incumbent on us as a government to understand that, government is ourselves, and, we can be a contributor too. The times are pretty desperate right now, and I think it would be a worthy gesture that really speaks about our commitment to care for the neediest people among us. I mean, that is our job as a government. So I'd urge us.
But Jeff, can you find out if that's FEMA reimbursable also? Because if it's FEMA reimbursable, it makes it also easier to swallow that as far as.
You know what? I have to say honestly that in a situation like this, where people are lining up on the streets, something we've never seen before, we don't count pennies or look for reimbursements. We try to lend a hand.
Let me finish my comment, and you would have heard my comment, Jeff. That's the thing.
Let Mr. Lees have a moment here.
I would just say, I don't mind that what you're discussing, Jeff, okay? But again, there's a lot we also have to look at, because when you look at FEMA reimbursements also, this can go to that donation aspect that the town puts into reimbursements, which normally is about 75 to 25 as far as the ratio on there. So when we start looking at the expenditures of finances that more than we already do in our yearly budget, that's some information I wouldn't mind having. And if you can actually find that, it'd be great. It would give it even more clarification for us to move forward if we needed to.
I'm reminded of.
Jeff, please, Jeff, let's take turns here. You had a turn.
I want to make one quick comment. I'm reminded of something Franklin Roosevelt said. Please, excuse me. I'm going to make this comment. I'm reminded of something Franklin Roosevelt said, during an equally desperate time. He said, when your neighbor's house is on fire, you don't argue over the price of the garden hose.
Okay. So what about if your neighbor's house is being inundated with pine beetles? What do you do in that situation?
Neem tie.
Can I
listen, I want to just say something about the town and its role in this specific incidents that just brought up, and that is donating money to our area food pantries. We stand ready to do that as soon as it's necessary. As I said before, I'm in constant contact with the food pantries. They've expressed that there's been a great deal of generosity within our community, and you raised the point of why make rich people pay. Rich people aren't being made to pay. They're doing that because they're part of the community, Jeff. And this is a time when those who have resources give to those who don't is appropriate. And we're going to be in this for the long haul. We're going to take care of our people when they need it. And right now they don't need it. We stand ready to do that. There is a direct correlation and impact to using taxpayer money for this purpose. And many of the people who pay those taxes are going to have trouble finding the resources to do so on May 31st. And I don't want to further use that money when there's plenty of generous folks in the community who are willing to step in. Again, we're a safety net. We don't need to have the net filled just yet, but we're there to do it when the time comes.
And if I could, one of the things that we're looking into is if the food pantries are having issues sourcing food, or they're having issues with tremendous inflation, we're looking in Diane Patrizio and Jeannie Carosa in purchasing, and I've spoken to John Jilnicki, if there's a way for us to source the food using our bids or our contracts so that we can bring the cost down, but also avail ourselves of the possibly the produce or the canned goods or the breads or whatever is dairy products, whatever is needed. And because in some cases, the food pantries are having trouble sourcing the food. And as Peter said, they are, we do have a very generous community, and checks have been coming in, but, if it comes to it, I'm more than happy. We donate to Meals on Wheels now. We donate to the Springs Food Pantry now. In our current budget, we give, we have the East Hampton Food Pantry is in the back on the Town Hall complex. We've also had TCOs at the food pantries to help manage the traffic because there is a long line that queues up. You saw it in Montauk. The same is happening in Springs. So the town is stepping up where it needs to step up. And I think that if we needed to step up from a monetary situation, all of us would be on board with that.
David, do you have a liaison report?
I do, actually. Thank you. We already discussed Parks and Recreation, the aspects within the township. I want to go over sanitation right now. Based on the governor's executive order 20218, which requires face masks in public locations. Masks are required to use the town's recycling facility, so please bring your mask whenever you enter the East Hampton town's recycling facilities, both in Montauk and also in East Hampton. Permits have been extended. If you are a March 31st permit, which is also on the website, expired, East Hampton Town recycling permit will be extended until further notice. But you can also send in or contact the sanitation at 324-7191 and also mail in your permit renewal if you wish. The physical address is 260 Springs Fireplace Road, East Hampton 11937. This was discussed also a little bit by Chief Sarla earlier. When you're at the sanitation facilities, please do not leave any materials outside of the containers. You're just asking for our staff and others to actually have to move your materials again. We also want you to assist with proper recycling. Cardboard goes in cardboard. Glass goes in glass bins. I'm sorry to say this again, but a lot of people don't always execute it appropriately. Please assist with the pressure that we have on sanitation because of our numbers and our tonnage that is coming in with proper recycling. Lastly, I know I mentioned this last week, also Chief just did, please do not litter. Litter either by two forms. First of all, most importantly, masks and gloves. Please do not leave them outside. Take them home and dispose of them yourselves. Please do not leave in a parking lot, either at a CVS, at a recycling center, at an IGA or a medical location. I believe that is just rude. Lastly, also, household refuse is not supposed to be going into our cans, our trash cans that gets collected at any of our road ends. Please take them to the recycling center, your household refuse. You have a permit. You can also pay a daily fee. And Buildings and Grounds, again, I want to thank the staff of Buildings and Grounds. They're in charge with all the the trash refuse removal at our beaches. They're also in charge with the cleaning of our town facilities, which they have done great with. They've assisted with this installation of large signs. You'll see them anywhere from Town Line Road all the way out to the Montauk Green right now, stating that the mask and face coverings are now mandated and desired when in the public settings. I also want to thank Building the Grounds. I got a phone call from Miss Joan Tulp. She wanted to make sure that the sand was removed in the Amagansett parking lots. There was a big blow 2 weeks ago from the south, and tons and yardage of sand came in. So that's being removed as we move forward. our SLIPS committees. SLIPS committees, I want to make everyone aware that the 3 Mile Harbor Head of the Harbor project is on schedule still for Memorial Day. You'll be receiving your renewals in the mail shortly from the clerk's office, so please continue to be on the lookout for that. Lastly, parents. I know a lot of parents are out there with your children right now. We had a virtual meeting of the Amagansett Life Saving Society yesterday, and we talked about all the museums that are out there that you can do virtual tours with your kids. We're all looking for this, and it's just not for kids. This is all for all adults. Please look at our local museums for information how you can assist with their programming going forward. I do know that there was a new virtual tour that they are putting up for the Jackson Pollock Krasner. And there's also museums in New York City, Boston. It's a great way to spend some time if you're on the internet and home, and also just to enlighten everyone's self. Thank you. That's my liaison report.
Thank you, David. Sylvia?
Yeah, I'll throw in there, Guildhall also has a virtual tour of the members exhibit that's been going on. So now you can see it. The people that I've talked to that have seen it have raved about it and said it was really well done. Seeming very professional, but very easy to do. So anyway.
I took that tour. I can also recommend it. Took it myself.
Good. The Energy Sustainability Committee met yesterday with a Zoom meeting. And we're working towards getting the CCA legislation and moving that forward. We had a work session on it last Tuesday, so I'm asking the town board if they want to put that on the agenda to notice it for a public hearing on May the 7th. So again, that community choice aggregation legislation would allow us at some point to opt into having a choice of what type of electricity we would like, and if it's split between fossil fuels and renewables, if it's all renewables, and everybody can then have a choice of how they want to receive their electricity and how it's generated. So is everyone on board? I talked with John Jelnicki that there were after the discussion, so pretty much what you saw last Tuesday would be what we would notice for public hearing.
So I support moving forward, as you said, Sylvia, and this is the really crucial part of this, is it doesn't actually commit the town to a CPA, but it is enabling legislation so that we could further pursue that forward. Board members?
Yes, Sylvia, thank you for getting it moved forward. I'm glad to see it finally becoming a reality.
All right, so I'll have it, and John, I know you're still listening.
I'm here.
We'll have it ready for a resolution and a public hearing on the May 7th meeting. Just also remind people, so LIPA is taking...
I'm sorry, so you're going to have the notice ready for the 7th?
Yes, the notice for the public hearing will be for the 7th. I'm assuming we'll hear it on the 21st.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, just so people understand that we're not holding the hearing on the 7th.
Right, sorry. So LIPA is going to be taking a vote on whether or not to move on May 20th, whether or not we can use that enabling legislation. So, and I know the Energy Sustainability Committee is they're individually going to write letters in support of towns on Long Island being able to opt in to something like this if they so choose. So again, it's up to people to choose to do this, or community.
I did send a letter to the LIPA board, which I believe all the board members did sign on to as well, requesting the trustees adopt this.
Yes. So
Sylvia, is there a way to do a little, I know there's been a lot of education around this, and we had a really thoughtful dialogue last week on it, but I know that, this is can be complicated for people to wrap their heads around. So I know if we hear it, in the middle of May and probably vote on it in June, the more that we can push out information, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll double check to make sure Lauren put that, her PowerPoint presentation online, on the website.
Right.
So you can go to that on the website. It may be up there. Also, Energize East Hampton is continually updating their website. So if people want to go see, I'll make sure that it's also on the website for Energize East Hampton.
Great.
So we did talk about Energize East Hampton. As you know, we also are going out for an RFP to use some of those services that are now not going to be available to us. Peak Savers program has ended. LIPA will still offer some rebates on thermostats and things that were being given away by Peak Savers. And the Green Homes ends at the end of June. And so that's part of the RFP to go into, continue with those free energy audits so people can avail themselves of that service as well. Let's see what else. Oh, so we also talked about, you'll see this soon, we've been talking about electric leaf blowers. There are two villages, I believe, the village of Southampton, the village of East Hampton has now said that leaf blowers in that community have to be electric, which means that they're much quieter. So we're going to be looking into that, as we also are going to look into sending, they've already got it written out, for the town to purchase, whenever possible, electric vehicles. So we've talked about it before at a work session, but you haven't seen it written out by the recommendation from the Energy Sustainability Committee. So we're going to be doing that. You should get that probably within the next week. Just want to bring you up to date on the affordable housing overlay. We had put one there. I want to try to combine all the affordable housing overlays that are needed within the town. There is one that's been a request to add an affordable housing overlay from Georgia Green, the people that are doing the affordable housing in Amagansett. And the memo, I've asked Joanne to at least add some more information to it so that we have a history of affordable housing overlays within the town. So we know where they've been. Some of them have been taken off through the comprehensive plan update that some of them now have been purchased and are being used for farming. So, but in the past they had an affordable housing overlay on them. So I think that is important for the community to understand what's happened and how we've used affordable housing overlays, and also adding what we now want to put more affordable housing overlays, which would include the Triune Baptist Church and the Smith Family Trust properties that we just purchased. So we need to move that forward so that we can get that whole idea moving, and the town, and hopefully the board will come together and discuss how those properties were going to be developed. But we need to first make sure that they have an affordable housing overlay over them.
So Sylvia,
can I jump in for a minute there, please?
Jeff, just a second. You want to go ahead and propose a date for a work session agenda item?
Yeah, I'm really going to take Joanne's lead on this, because I'm asking her staff to prepare everything. So as soon as I know that Joanne's staff is going to be able, Joanne Powell, the head of the planning department, is going to be able to help us with that affordable housing overlay, then yeah, I'd like to look at all of them together.
I support moving that topic forward. Jeff, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I also have been in touch with Joanne Powell, specifically on the Georgia Green plan, because that's a little bit more definitive than what's going on the other properties. And I've also talked to John Jilnicki a bit about this, and asked for a little bit more explanation of the secret process in the memo. So I just was communicating with her as recently as yesterday.
You mean with regard to an affordable housing overlay designation?
Yes. The designation and the project, and how they relate and how they're viewed under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and how it affects the review of the zoning change.
And do you have any information you can share with us on that specifically?
Yeah, but I think it probably would be best to get a memo first. But in general, when you have a project, in the Georgia Green case, they do have a project and some preliminary plans. The zoning change is typically considered to be a part of the project, and any action to move forward on the zoning change triggers the full SEQR review, because under New York State environmental laws, the object is to examine environmental impacts as early as possible in moving forward on the action. And so it's a little bit more involved on the Georgia Green case, because there is a project and the zone change relates to it.
I think Sylvia was suggesting that we have a broader discussion about affordable housing overlays in general, the history of them, areas where they were and have been removed, and then areas where they might be proposed.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with
It's
that.
not really specific to that one application, but
I understand that.
certainly,
I understand that.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that discussion. I know that the project is, it's coming toward us relatively soon. So,
and then of course any project there would have to be reviewed and would be subject to site plan and obviously SEQR review.
Right.
It also goes into the recommendations that CHOF had. So I think that having the history of the AHOs and how CHOF always wants you to look back at those as we try to move forward in redesignating is extremely important for the board and the public to see that. So they presented that to us last year in 2019.
Right.
So Sylvia, I look forward to that discussion.
Okay, great.
I see it as useful. It's a useful discussion.
Okay.
So you have any further liaison report?
No, I am. Only other one was, and I'm doing this for Carol as well. I know we've talked a lot about the tax issue, and May 31st is the deadline. She's going to be ready to send out a notice so that people are aware that that their second half is due, those that need to pay the second half. So I think she needs some direction. I need some direction. I think the board needs direction on when we can send out those notices so that people have time to see those notices and know that they need to get those that payment in.
Yeah, at this point, they should be making those payments on time if they possibly can. I don't have anything further that could be put in a notice, and I don't think it would be appropriate to send something other than that.
Okay. We had talked about it a little bit before, Peter, and that's what I had told Carol. So I just want to make sure that our tax receiver is getting letters ready. Okay. All right.
No, it's the same as in past years.
Yep.
Right now.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. So as I mentioned, and the chief had also stated, this week we had word back from the state that they're going to increase enforcement and approve overtime for park staff to better manage their parklands within the township. So I appreciate that kind of support, and we look forward to those resources actually being deployed. We have, and David hit on this a little bit with regard to extension of permits. At sanitation, if you currently have a dump permit, a recycling permit that's expired now from this past year, it's being extended. You don't need to purchase a new one. If you don't have one at all, you can purchase it via the mail. Contact the clerk's office about that. But there's also been some discussion about extending the other permits as well. For the time being, they are being extended. If you have a clam license or launching ramp permit, whatever it might be, a mooring permit, until further notice. We'll likely start requests that people renew those in the coming weeks. But at this point, there's a cessation of enforcement on that, and you can go ahead. You can also pay if you're pay by the load at the recycle center. You can still do that. But also there was requests from builders and others who have existing building permits requesting that we extend them by the amount of time since the pause order was put into effect. I believe the board members had weighed in on an email, taking a straw poll that they support this activity. So that is something the building department has been instructed to do, to extend those permits that were issued prior to New York State pause by the amount of time that the executive order is in effect, restricting construction. Again, we're trying on all levels of government to adapt to this changing circumstance and to better serve all of you. I would remind folks to be very careful about scams. At this time, there are a lot of telephone scams that people are trying to perpetrate. It's always amazing to me that at a time like this, a national crisis, an international crisis, that there are some who are so unscrupulous that they would try and prey upon others. But I guess, pandemic or not, those folks are just going to be unscrupulous. Be particularly careful about outreach and scams regarding Social Security payments and COVID-19. That's like the latest, hottest scam out there. To add to those, others such as your grandchild has been arrested and needs bail money. These are unfortunately scams that are effective to a large enough percentage that people continue to perpetrate them. So please be careful about that. As was mentioned a couple times earlier, the Suffolk County Executive is convening a special working group on beaches to discuss the summer programs and how we can have a regional approach. I'm going to be directly involved with that to ensure that East Hampton is well represented in those discussions and that our specific needs and requests are heard. The state unemployment has launched a new streamlined link. There were, due to the amazing number of unemployment claims being made, a huge queue, and people weren't able to get through on phone lines. To get through the application process was very problematic, time consuming, and many people weren't able to get through. We'll have that new link. Actually, we already have that new link put up on the website. So you can, hopefully that will work much better. I've been assured that it's a great improvement over what was previously the case. Had a conversation and was able to ask questions about the status of Southampton Hospital yesterday, and I spoke with Robert Ross directly, and there have been a number of cases of COVID at the hospital, but at the current moment, and knock on wood, it's pretty much flat, and they're below capacity. One of our primary goals here in our community and in the neighboring community of Southampton is to flatten this curve, to reduce the number of cases so that we don't overwhelm our healthcare system. Right now, the status is okay. We're in okay position, and I just say okay because obviously this can change quickly. And I don't want people to think that, okay, it's not going to be a problem. I can take additional risks. I don't need to worry about my health or others, because we still need to do that. As far as supplies and materials, they're very well stocked in a number of key supplies and materials. There is a nationwide shortage of certain supplies and materials. Those quantities are low, and there's an effort, obviously, to ramp them up. There are some medications that relate to COVID-specific treatments and intubations. And there is a need for the blue isolation gowns. They have supplies of them, but again, there is a need to continue to ramp that up nationwide. The availability of them is limited, and I've been assured they have enough for now, but that's something that nationally will have to be dealt with. The update on essential businesses, and again, as we mentioned earlier, the chief and I have been dealing with the ever-changing landscape, no pun intended there, with the essential businesses. The most recent change, one of the most recent changes in designations, is that marinas are now considered essential. or at least permissible to operate. That's a change. Before they were non-essential. So recreational boating is now permitted. Again, social distancing still has to be practiced. We understand that private golf courses have been opened up to the extent that members can play while social distancing. The grounds crews can maintain the courses, but no clubhouse staff and no amenities at this time. The state and county had closed their golf courses. The town doesn't currently have a golf course. The state may be relaxing their golf closures somewhat. I haven't gotten any direct word yet as to whether or not that's occurred, but that could happen. One of my personal concerns was regarding swimming pool maintenance. And as I said earlier in the meeting, swimming pools that were already open when the COVID crisis and executive order came out for the pause were allowed to continue to be maintained as part of sanitation and maintenance, essential sanitation maintenance within a private residence. But pools that weren't opened were not allowed to be opened. They're considered non-essential. Several times on the call with the county exec's office and county exec, health commissioner, and state governor's representative, I expressed my concern that as the weather warms, with stagnant water behind many people's homes, that there was an increased risk of mosquito infestation in the area. And, the pools can be opened in a relatively safe way, certainly with fewer people than we've seen on some landscaping crews. They can maintain at least an 18-foot distance to pull the cover off, and then most pools are only maintained by one worker at a time anyway, once they're open. So that's a recent change. I'm happy to see that as mosquito season is just beginning to start. I think that's it for the latest guidance on essential businesses. That, again, continues to change, and we will continue to inform the public. The ESD website link on the town's website will provide the latest list as well. I want to thank David Lease for helping me get the signs up around town, reminding the public that when out in public, face masks and facial coverings are important to have. We've placed this double-sided sign in front of Town Hall. There's one at the entrance to town on Route 114, one in Waynescott, the entrance to town on 27. There's also another sign at the entrance to Montauk, as well as signs being placed at the transfer stations, both in Montauk and on Springs Fireplace Road. And again, we've limited the number of parking spaces at the transfer station for greater separation. And anyone using the town transfer facilities will need to be wearing a face covering, given the fact that it's too difficult to socially distance in that setting. So just as an added precaution. So that is my liaison report for the moment. And again, we ask that everybody continue practicing social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Stay safe and be well. And at this point, we have resolutions to approve.
Sure. We'll start with Resolution 2020-476 is to appoint Veronica Daniels, the part-time positions of food service worker and driver messenger in the Human Services Department at the hourly rate of $16.50, effective April 22nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. Sylvia, you have a resolution?
I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can,
Did
Shall I
not.
read it? I
Yeah.
can read
I
it for
can
you.
read it.
Thank
It's
you.
Resolution 2020-477 is to set a public hearing to consider amending Chapter 117 to revise the music entertainment permit. And this is regarding those changes which we've discussed at a recent work session. And that hearing is scheduled to be on May 21st. And that will be at 11 a.m. Excuse me, 11 a.m. Or soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard.
Second.
And again, there will be all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I pass and carried. There will be the ability of the general public to email us, to call in and make comments directly live streamed via teleconference. Phone number, which again is 351-888-6331. Resolution 478 is Manor House air testing, and that the amount of an additional $3,233.35.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Jeff, you have a resolution?
Resolution 2020-479 is to approve a license renewal for Flyblade for the airport terminal counter space at $60,000 per year. And I just wanted to, actually it's $61,080 per year. Just to remind everyone that we're not allowed to pick and choose licensees at the airport. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
No, we see you. We
okay.
see you, hear you, Jeff.
Okay. Something happened here. I don't see you. But,
Can't see yourself.
No, I'll try to fix it, but.
Well, we can see you and we can hear you. So
okay, so it's ready for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. 2020-480 is a motion, labor crew leader, Ian Megason, and that would be at an hourly rate of $31.35, $65,208.46 annually. And that's effective retroactive March 29th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. 481 is a status change to automotive equipment operator by Matthew Smith, and that is an hourly rate of $20.95, $43,588.48 annually.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Carried. 482 is to approve Motorola Solutions Service Agreement, radio management device, radio software programming services in the amount of $12,750 per year for a 5-year term, not to exceed $63,750.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And carried. 483 is to renew 2019-20 HR CPI benefits advisors. This is regarding Affordable Care Act ACA compliance. And that is in the amount of $19,100.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Carried. 484 is to authorize funds for social media publications. And that is, whereas town of East Hampton would like to further publicize in real time the town's actions to protect health and safety of its residents in response to COVID-19. Town board authorized boosting town posts on social media, including Facebook and Instagram, not to exceed $2,500.
Second.
One sec, we're changing the budget line to civil defense.
Yes, it did. I have to pull that number up on my.
I have it. I don't. Carol, do you? So it's A 3640-54500.
So A3450-45500.
A 3640-54500.
So do I have a second as amended?
Second as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. Resolution 2020-485 is to pay previous year's invoices for galls, and that is in the amount of $47.08.
Second. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passed and carried. I just want to just say, not that any of us are really paying too much attention to the weather, because a lot of us are still indoors most of the day, but there has been a hazardous weather outlook advisory for this late this afternoon. High winds, gusts 20 to 25 with potential up to 50 mile an hour, I think. That's what it said here somewhere. Yes, gusts up to 50. So, and a freeze warning as well. So I'm glad I brought the geraniums in last night. I thought it was early to put them out, but
We're hopeful.
I'm going to leave them in for another couple days. I just want to make people aware of that. That's it for our work session agenda item.
Can we also remind folks that tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and that the theme for this year is climate action?
That's great, Kathy. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I'm not focused on Earth Day right now. It's just saying, normally we would be celebrating it.
Yeah.
I think we still should celebrate it. Obviously, our environment is near and dear to this town board, and it's certainly necessary for all of us to protect it and do what we can. So I really appreciate you reminding us. Hadn't been focused on Earth Day. At this time, I just want to reiterate my gratitude for all the volunteers that we have within our town, and all the dedicated town staff that we had keeping government operating.
Yeah.
It's really a wonderful outpouring of humanity that we see in what are very difficult times. And I know this is negatively affecting everyone, and some more than others. Clearly, if you've recently become unemployed, or if you're sick or lost a loved one at this time, this is a really difficult period to get through. We all need to come together. We need to be kind to each other. We need to be helpful. We need to keep ourselves healthy. We need to keep our friends, neighbors healthy. Please respect the, guidance that is given out from health professionals, relayed by us and by others. And I just wish you all the very best, to you and your families during this difficult time. We're going to get through this together. So let's work together. Thank you. And I'll take a motion to go into exec session unless anybody else has something to say.
Now I'll make a motion to go into exec session for contracts.
And personnel, can we add personnel?
Yes, and personnel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we take a little break here, please?
Absolutely. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Is that long enough?
Yeah, for them.
Okay, so we'll reconvene at 1:51.
Okay.
Okay then.
Thank you.
Thanks.